This happened to my gal pal Erica. Cruella, a game of big brain plays and big name games. A film that focuses more on the villain of the classic story, because the dogs already got their live action movies. This isn't your average Disney adaptation. This movie is rated PG-13. Cruella gets drunk. In all seriousness, it actually surprised me that this movie is rated PG-13. I'm just so used to the safe and family-friendly shameless live-action remakes. Granted, in the source material, Cruella is a descendant of the devil, so we would have gotten there eventually. This gives me hope that Disney is starting to branch out and do more with their classic stories. They began to do this with Maleficent, and Cruella is a sign to me that they haven't completely given up on the idea. That's good, because they killed Star Wars and the MCU could only go on for so long, so they're gonna need something. Cruella is the first movie I saw in theaters since the pandemic, so to me, it's personal. Actually, my theater experience was the best one I've had since Endgame. Granted, I only ever saw one other movie in that time. The scene where the dude gets hit with a cork, that really got people going. I went into Cruella not knowing what to expect. Snippets of reviews I saw before seeing it were mixed at best. Disney's live-action adaptations before this had been terrible, but I ended up really liking Cruella, and it was a fun time watching. Another thing I heard before seeing the movie was all the comparisons to Joker. Cruella was even dubbed Girl Joker. I think. I'm not the only one who called her that, right? Honestly, the similarities are so stretched thin that if you put it on a sandwich, you would starve. I mean, yeah, the jokes are funny, they're just not accurate. A darker Disney movie. It's a surprise, but a welcome one. So with that being said, what is Cruella? Cruella is not a retelling of the original 101 Dalmatians story, in any way. I feel like the trailers made that pretty clear. This movie is a Cruella de Vil origin story, because that's the modern trend. This is our main character, Estella Miller, but you probably know her better from her more popular name, Gwen Stacy. This story starts with young Cruella, and if you're wondering if they ever explain the hair, they don't. This movie is 2 hours long, and they never explain it. Cruella gets expelled from school because she was simply built different. This forces our characters to move to London. What a horrible fate. Before they could reach any destination, they stop at Hellman's Hall, because the plot needs to happen. The mother has to go and do something, so she tells Cruella to stay in the car. But, of course, Cruella doesn't, and ends up causing a fiasco that ends in her mother's death. How sad. Under the impression she game-ended her mother, Cruella runs and doesn't look back, eventually arriving in London. Wow, what a coincidence. This is when we meet Jasper and Horace, a duo of petty thieves, and the three of them decide to form a gang. Estella, Jasper, and Horace, the same three goons from the original, but now made of flesh and bones instead of ink and paper. Classic reflection of age transition. They did this in The Amazing Spider-Man. No, it's too early for those jokes. 10 years later and these guys are still petty criminals. I respect the commitment. However, Estella is depressed because she believes she could be doing better and is reminded of how she failed her mother every time she looks out a window. Cruella doesn't want to be a petty thief. She wants to be a designer and believes her mother would have wanted more from her. So, with this in mind, Jasper harnesses the power of his inner simp and gets Estella a job at the fashion design store place. The thing she was looking depressed over. A store in London controlled by a narcissist called Liberty. What a cruel world. However, our hero is not a designer, but instead, a janitor. Plot twist joke. Cruella proceeds to get drunk and vandalizes private property. How noble. This is where we're introduced to our main villain. The one who's not the main villain. The Baroness. She hires name because of the window display. Remember, kids, if your boss isn't giving you the time of day, vandalize their business and hope someone rich and powerful notices. Now Estella works for the Baroness in this factory, and you could tell she's special because you could spot her in the crowd. This is definitely going to get OSHA in your spam folder, but whatever. Surprise, surprise, Estella is not terrible at her job. Wow, how convenient. Meanwhile, 35 minutes in, and we finally unlock our fifth main character. It's better timing than Age of Ultron. This is Artie, one of the few heroes in the story that is actually employed. Cruella is now taken under the wing of the Baroness as an assistant or something. I don't know, they never actually say. She kind of just becomes suddenly very important after designing one dress. Plot detail time. A character goes to the fountain to speak to her mother that died all that time ago. They had plans to come here before the incident, so I guess the fountain is symbolism for her mother now? Cool. If it wasn't obvious enough, the Baroness thinks that Estella is special. I could relate to this. The last person to call me special was Carson in his YouTube's ad stream before the incident. If someone with poor judgment calls you good, are you actually good? Anyways, woman promises not to become a threat to society, which is immediately broken because those promises are the best kind. Estella Miller notices a familiar necklace that the Baroness was wearing, the same one her mother gave her back in the Dark Ages. It turns out that the Baroness was present when Estella's mother was killed. Being unaware that the woman was Estella's mother, she goes on a tangent saying how she was a terrible parent. And so it begins. The second act. The crew... Do you see what I did there? I'm funny, guys. Subscribe. Anyways, they plan a time heist to get the necklace back during one of the Baroness's many plot-convenient events. Me in French class when the teacher started speaking not English. Sadly, their problem has a small plan. Estella would get recognized, so she can't go to the ball. And this This is when Cruella emerges. Look, I know I've been calling her Cruella this entire time, but this is the first point in the movie where the persona is actually used. Their plan ultimately fails because the Baroness is wearing the necklace. So Jasper distracts her and Cruella just rips it off. But wait, you wouldn't think it would be that easy, did you? She loses the necklace and it gets swallowed by a Dalmatian. Hey, look! Look, it's the dog. Turned out that the Baroness has a dog whistle that she uses to command the Dalmatians, which sounds very familiar to something Cruella heard the night her mom died. Plot twist! Again, Cruella didn't kill her mother, the Baroness did, and now it's personal. More personal. The game has changed. Jasper and Horace now need to get the necklace out of the dog. For extra help, Cruella enlists Artie to make outfits, and her old friend Anita, who is conveniently a reporter. Nothing says success like tampering with the media to bend to your will. Why does Cruella have a wig of her own hair? Why would you ever need that? Now Emma Stone is playing two roles at once. Estella, who remains working for the Baroness in order to get closer and understand her antics, keep your enemies close. And Cruella, who is doing the dirty deed of using any means necessary in order to overtake the Baroness and ruin her image. The current plan is to have both of these plays come together to enact the final revenge. Slight problem, however. The Baroness isn't stupid and figures it out. But how did she figure it out? Was it the similarity in name, or how they sound the same, or perhaps Emma Stone's very distinct cheekbones? No. It was Horace being dumb enough not to wear a disguise when helping Estella. Yeah, the Baroness recognized him from like a mile away. Wait, how did she... Oh, right. Main characters stand out in crowd. Yeah, I forgot. So, of course, now that you've caught Cruella in the act, the only rational thing to do is send Jasper and Horace to jail and then tie Cruella to a chair and leave her to die in a fire. Yep, PG-13. I see it now. But hold on, Cruella is alive. And she was saved by the Baroness's butler, who reveals that the necklace is actually a key that unlocks a box that has Estella's birth certificate that reveals that the Baroness is actually her real mother. Alright, that's enough. Then, Cruella smashes the box in a fit of rage, revealing a secret subway token that takes her to a secret underground lab that... Oh, wait, hold on. Wrong movie. Estella goes to her mother fountain to give the last villain's monologue and complete the transition from Estella Miller to Cruella. So with much to avenge, revenge, and destroy, Gwen busts Jasper and Horace out of prison, rekindles their trust with the power of family, and sets off to overthrow the Baroness, once and for all. Until the sequel. Also, Cruella gets the surname DeVille from her car. I just felt like that was worth mentioning. With the butler guy giving them cheat codes, it's easy to take control of the Baroness's last plot-convenient event. They hijack the dress code and have everyone show up dressed as Cruella. Wait, what is the point of doing that if you're just gonna cosplay as Estella at the end? Like, I get it's to confuse the guards, but they give them false orders through the earpieces anyway, so why not just do that from the start? Anyways, Marge Simpson tries to kill Estella, but her plot armor is just too strong. I like how the quote-unquote final battle isn't some giant third-act blowout, but is rather the hero and villain trying to outsmart each other. The Baroness pushes Estella over the cliff, and she dies. That's it. Movie over. Or so we thought. Turns out Cruella's ridiculously shaped skirt wasn't a character quirk, but rather a parachute. Why didn't she just do that in Spider-Man? Estella respawns as Cruella DeVille, throws her mother in jail, and takes her entire fortune. Yay? I would have given this movie an 11 out of 10 if she threw her arms up right here and did the Cruella pose. So like everyone and their moms have been saying that the opening to Cruella is the worst thing to happen to cinema. Yeah, it's janky, but you'll survive. It's a basic introduction to the story. Do you want to understand the plot or just sit there and complain? I will say though, why does every movie have to start with the main character as a kid, learning the importance of family or something? Cruella does it, Space Jam did it, Black Widow did it, Fast 9 did it. It's a weird trope and I'm confused on why every major movie this year started with it. It takes 15 minutes for Emma Stone to show up in this movie about Emma Stone. Honestly, I was expecting it to be a lot worse than it is. The reviews I saw before going to the theaters described the opening as the end of humanity. In reality, it's just a classic movie hiccup, and I'd much rather have it in the first 15 minutes than the second or even third act. As mentioned before, this movie has a funny Star Wars plot twist. It's alright. They do set it up. It doesn't come out of nowhere. They set it up in the beginning of the movie where the butler guy puts the hat back on Kid Cruella. It's just that when you're watching the movie for the first time, you don't know to look for that, so it catches you off guard. But makes more sense on the second, third, or even sixth rewatch. Now, personally, I'm not a fan of the "no, I'm your real biological parent" plot twist. However, this doesn't hurt Cruella. It doesn't ruin the movie. In fact, I think it strengthens certain parts. Like when Estella Miller officially becomes Cruella DeVille, that's a great scene and it would have never happened without the reveal. I'm torn on the twist. I've narrowed my point of view down to 2 points about it. one going for and one going against. We'll start with the one going against the reveal. Cruella, or Estella rather, gets handed the job at Liberty because Jasper pulled some strings. So the scene at the fountain where she's like, "Oh wow, I did it." No, you didn't. You cheated. But that gets balanced out when she does the window display and is hired by the Baroness. So that one isn't as bad. But the whole movie is Cruella Miller working every cell of her body to get to the top, and then the final act ends with her just inheriting everything. Part of me feels like the inheritance part was a bit cheap and the character went too easy. As for my point going for the movie is that Estella Hellman was supposed to be game-ended as a baby, but then she gets adopted by Catherine. But then Catherine frickin' dies, so Estella Cruella de Miller had everything taken from her. She's at the bottom, and then the twist happens and it turns out that she was supposed to have all this. Now she's getting the better of those who wronged her and is finally taking back what was supposed to be hers. And in that regard, I could respect the plot twist a little more. There's something about poetic justice that's just so poetic, after all. This most likely is the point of the movie, but I also think that my first point still has some validity. I want to see Cruella work for and earn what she gets just as much as I want to see Estella get back everything that was taken from her, so I don't know what side to run with. What do you guys think about these two things, and which one do you lean towards? I like that we could see Cruella thinking. There are a couple scenes in this movie that I really like because of how Cruella handles the situation. The first one is when the Baroness is attempting to game end her. They get into a squabble of who could get the last laugh, and Estella loses. You can see her realize this, and she instantly turns to the guards and entices them to try and regain power. That's the thing about the Cruella persona. She always has to have a response because she's trying to outplay someone who is often the biggest person in the room. So I like how we see her fail at that and try to get back up by using other people. The other scene is when they go out for lunch. In a previous scene, the Baroness says that gratitude is for losers in response to Cruella thanking her for advice. So, in the lunch scene, Estella acts lost by, again, saying thank you, and this gets the Baroness to open up a little bit about how she works. I like how Gwen is able to trick the Baroness into revealing how she thinks by using her own advice against her. She also does it throughout the movie, it's not just this lunch scene. Once Cruella has this knowledge, she uses it periodically. I said this in my Age of Ultron video, but I really appreciate the smaller stuff. The scene in general is just good because despite how evil she is, I think the Baroness's advice could actually be applied to real life. Sometimes people are obstacles and sometimes you just can't care. You can't afford to be hung up on stuff and let that hold you back. I think it's unfortunately realistic but comically accurate. Another scene I like is when they're preparing for the final battle of the movie and the song that's playing says Joker right when Cruella is in the center of the screen. I'm gonna be honest, it kind of felt intentional. Also, stuff like Cruella falling out of the garbage truck and revealing that she's wearing her own name from the headlines, that's a power play. There isn't a single character in this movie that I don't like. I enjoy every person that appears on screen, even the guy at the dog groomers, the way he kicks the stand. I feel your pain, man. Cruella, the movie not the character, did a good job of making evil characters still fun to watch. That's good, considering the main character is Cruella freaking DeVille. Even the dogs are cool. This movie managed to make Cruella the main character without changing the essential aspect of her character. That she's cruel. It's funny to see how zany she could get. I like clever and quick-witted characters, and this movie achieves that without making them annoying. Same with the Baroness. One aspect I really like about the character is how much she doesn't care. Like, she says to Estella during lunch, once something is no longer useful to her, it's gone. We see this with stuff like her throwing garbage out the window or dropping the newspaper on the floor. These two could be real unapologetically evil, and it's fun to see them try to one-up each other in that regard. Moving on to the other characters, Horace played more of the comedic relief, but it wasn't done in a way that gets boring or annoying. This movie is listed as a comedy, but it's really not. The characters have more of a charm that help them balance things out, but this movie isn't oversaturated with humor. Like I said with the guy getting hit with the cork, it's really just smaller stuff that doesn't take away from the movie. The jokes don't bring the pacing to a halt, and that's good. In the movie, Jasper is described as insightful, and that's not wrong. He's a moral compass of the group, which is interesting when they're all supposed to be evil. He stops Cruella from falling too far and keeps her level. He is the only sane character that isn't immediately on board with things like murder. With this and the Baroness saying that you can't care about people, it's like they wanted to have some sort of a yin and yang with Cruella's morals. It plays into the fact that Cruella is kind of built by the people around her, and that's neat. Speaking of which, there's a little something going on between Cruella and Jasper, or at least Jasper. Cruella's just mean. But it's possible. If they decide to make a sequel, I could see them going for that. Then there's Artie, who's not in the movie too much, but it's fun when he is. He's witty and had a couple one-liners that got a chuckle out of me. He also knocks a dude out in one kick. Cruella has a thick soundtrack. Usually I don't like movies that have a heavy amount of music, especially when they're in place of a score. It takes me out of the movie. I will admit, when I first saw it in theaters, it was a little bit distracting how a new song would play every time the scene changes. But there are two things that Cruella does that makes the music okay. The first one is that the music actually adds to the atmosphere of the scene. I hate it when a movie or show plays a song for the sake of playing the song. Like in episode 2 of Loki, what was the point of that? Either the lyrics have something to do with what is happening in the movie, or the song adds another layer to the overall excitement of the scene. Like the jailbreak scene. It's genuinely one of my favorite scenes in the movie, and it's 100% because of the song that plays. The second thing is that the movie is set in the 70s, so the music is from the 60s and 70s, which makes it dated, but also prevents it from being dated. What I mean is that Cruella doesn't have songs that got uber popular for a year and then fell off, leaving the movie to be stuck in the time period where the song was made. Like, imagine you're watching a movie and then all of a sudden Watch Me Whip started playing. Yeah, that doesn't happen here. The movie has music from decades ago, but we aren't going to look back at Cruella in 10 years and be like, wow, what a product of the times. The score for this movie is great. I like how there are variations on them too, which makes sense. You only have 2 characters that have them, so you could do more with their themes. Sometimes after watching the movie, I would just sit and let the credits roll because they're that good. I'm someone who grew up with the Bungie intro playing before Halo 2, so when the guitar hits in Cruella's theme, it's bliss. I also like how the Baroness's theme has a cappella. Makes it unique, and is unfortunately easy for it to get stuck in your head. I think there's an argument that like Cruella is woke feminism or something, but to be honest, I never picked up on that. Maybe because my masculinity isn't so fragile that it's damaged by a woman in clown makeup. However, I can see where they're coming from, because Cruella can be a bit aggressive, and Horace and Jasper do bend to her will a little bit too easy. But she's a crazy person with a whacking stick. Are you gonna talk back to her? If Cruella wasn't bound to the laws of the UK, I feel like she would have shot someone in this movie. There's a scene where Jasper has to plead with her not to kill her birth mother, so I think it's just the character. This movie is strictly good. It's not bad, it's not perfect, it's just good. However, compared to the other live-action adaptations, Cruella is endgame. Now, there are rumors of a sequel. It's been reported as in development. Oh, fuck! Regardless, this movie kind of feels like it wants a sequel. The Baroness swears revenge, Cruella has a few ideas, and of course Roger and Anita. I don't see this becoming 101 Dalmatians, like logically that comes next, but you can't make this movie and be like, oh, now you have to hate Cruella. Now, originally at this part of the script, I said that I would be down for a Roger and Anita Disney Plus series. However, no. This movie could stand on its own. It doesn't necessarily need a sequel. This was written before it happened. I'm not coping. I know I would be fine without one, mainly because I'm afraid that they'll make a sequel and utterly butcher it. The director could have some genius idea, but the studio gets too involved and everything comes crashing down. That wouldn't be amazing. I hope Cruella does hold the door open a little bit longer for Disney to do more with their stories instead of just copy and pasting the script. Almost like Cruella becomes a bit of an Iron Man, which is weird considering what I just said about a sequel. What I mean is that Cruella starts something new. Not necessarily a cinematic universe, but just better movies from Disney, more stories with more characters, and overall more effort involved. This is the first adaptation I saw in theaters since Beauty and the Beast, and there's a reason for that. Not saying Cruella is perfect, but it's a small step, and you don't get to that giant leap by making Lion King 2. Anyways, that's the video, and it didn't take me 4 months to make. Amazing. I have to go overthrow someone's company now. Catch you in La La Land or something. That was the outro. Luckily, I didn't do the ending montage yet, so I'm still flexible. Look, the news broke out about Emma Stone signing on to a sequel for Cruella hours after I finished editing like 98% of the video. It's funny because I scrapped a joke about how every time I get close to finishing a script, something always happens. And now, it's happened twice. They should call the sequel To Ella, or at the very least make the L's Roman numerals. Regarding what I said about a sequel though, it might sound like I don't want one, but that's not the case. I like this movie and I can't wait to see what comes next. I was just really proud of that Spider-Man joke. I still do have a little concern because sequels nowadays are, yeah. But I'm sure it'll be fine. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, good for you. If you hated it, how cruel. Anyways, I have to go and hastily write my The Suicide Squad script before all my jokes become obsolete. Catch you in Moonlight or something. So with much to avenge, revenge, and destroy, Gwen busts Jasper out of Horace. I'm gonna Cruella to kill myself.